928-7333 or visit www.neurovisionacademy.com. That's www.neurovisionacademy.com.
So welcome back to Conscious Awakenings with your host, Hendrix. The question is, are you part of the global awakening? You know that story with the frog, and there's a slow boiling. It's a slow boiling point, so that it warms up gradually, and the frog doesn't know whether or not it's actually getting boiled to death. So the question is, as we receive more information, will we, how will we react? Will we stay asleep? Will we wake up? If we stay awake, or if we wake up, what will we do with this information in our lives, with our families? How will we respond to the world differently? Do you have any comments on that? Where do you see the world going to?
Well, what I really think is that people need to awaken soon, and not being a fearmonger, but with the BP oil spill and the financial situation our country's in, the amount of debt that we have, and the signs that are happening around us with the central bank dropping the dollar, the Chinese dropping the dollar, there's a very fine edge of where we're headed, and I'd say I'd rather be prepared than unprepared, but I'm going to have a balance. So what is that balance? Well, doing your normal job, enjoying your family, going out, doing these different things. On the backside, we all don't know when a natural disaster will happen. Now, is that natural disaster man-made or just by Mother Nature? If it's an earthquake, it's a hurricane, if it's the BP oil spill. But do we have a source of dry food in case there is a food shortage? Do we have a water filter to be able to get water out of sources that might not be clean but be able to drink it? Do we have just things place a source of maybe silver or gold to be able to just save some of our currency or our value, to keep the value of our money up if everything else fails, if the stock market goes down more, if the financial system truly collapses. And I don't want that. I don't think anyone wants that, but all the signs are happening around us that a double dip recession is happening. I mean, we just constantly hear this news over and over and over. It's like they constantly have us in a state of fear. If it's not the BP oil spill, it's a potential war in Iran. It's a financial collapse. And if it happens, that'd be horrible. If it doesn't happen, amazingly great. But as long as we are prepared with our families, I think that's the most important thing. And many people want to put their head in the sand and not acknowledge what's happening, and there's many people you'll try to awaken or tell, and they won't believe a thing that you say, and it's how you try to awaken them, and you give them different concepts and ideas about life, and to be able to ask questions and think, and I know for a fact there's people I will never be able to awaken, and that's just fine, and I respect that, but the more people you awaken, the more you can prepare them for what potentially could happen. And signs do show that. I mean, things are dire, and they look like they're getting worse, unfortunately. I mean, they're telling us that there's green shoots and things that are happening, but just look at the signs. I mean, on Outlivesheep, there's many, many stories from Washington Post to CNN to Fox News to alternative media sources. And when you connect the dots and you watch my movies and you do those different things, you start to get a different picture about what's happening. And many people would say, well, it's really depressing. And I can say, yeah, it makes me really depressed, too, with what's happening. I'd like to forget about I ever even hardly woke up. But then I say I can't go back to sleep because I know the truth now. And once you know the truth, it's very hard to go back.
Yeah, in terms of the signs that you talked about, it seems like everything's on fast forward. I remember moving into 2000, and there was this thing about, the world's going to end, right? And they had the computer bug, and right? What if all the computers just stopped? It was more kind of like a singular event and also nebulous in a sense. Like something was supposed to happen. You didn't know what was supposed to happen, but, and it's been like that historically. What's really interesting is, as we approach the 2012 to 2015 phenomenon, not to give any credence to it, but it seems like the signs are all the more credible or all the more serious. You have everything from, the electromagnetic fields being disrupted through some type of solar flare, right? Where it would destroy the transformers and basically destroy our electricity grids for half the planet, for the entire planet, basically sending us back into the dark ages in a sense. You have the H1N1 flu?
The swine flu.
The swine flu, and there was a reemergence out in Ukraine, and from some sources they're saying that there's going to be a release of this virus globally, if not as early as at the end of this year, but no later than the end of 2011, right? You just have so many different things with the food shortages, just even the water. I mean, just basic, simple things like water. They're saying the oil ultimately will contaminate our fresh water supplies, right? So where do we go? I mean, you can only live a few days without water, right? So then you have these bottling companies that are just flourishing as a result of that, right? So there's so many different signs. It seems like everything's on fast forward, and ultimately as this information continues to expand and grow, how does the average family basically deal with something like this?
Well, first, I believe that we all have to accept what's happening, and we have to acknowledge that the events around us. Because when we don't acknowledge it and we keep the television on telling us what to believe or think and not using our own mind to do the thinking, I really believe I'm not saying don't watch television, but take a step back and just think about life in general. And are you prepared? And I know we've already talked about that, but it does seem like things aren't fast forward. I mean, everything is moving extremely fast, and there's stories today saying that whatever financial collapse that they were trying to avert, and it seems like the powers that be have lost control of it, and now it's spinning out of control. And they brought up the derivatives market and how unknown and scary this whole market is, that it could collapse our whole system basically overnight. I'm talking about you going to bed on Sunday, and on Monday we're living in a different world. And families just have to awaken to what's happening, have plans, and it doesn't matter if it's a financial collapse or something worse, but have a plan of, where you're going to go. What if things are that bad? Do you have a plan to go somewhere else? Learning, it sounds crazy, but we're living in the city. I live in the city of Phoenix, very big city. Do we know how to farm? Do we know how to can our goods? If you look at the city of Phoenix, in a normal week, you have 4 to 5 days worth of food on the shelf in grocery stores as trucks bring food in. But if that stopped, you'd have 4 to 5 days worth of food. In a panic, you'd have 1 to 2 days worth of food. So where would people go get their food? Well, they would most likely depend on the government to provide it to them, and the FEMA camps, and that is that where you want to go? And you have to ask yourself that. Well, do I have a plan if that does happen? And not trying to scare people, but it's a possibility. I'd rather be prepared than unprepared.
Where do you see people relocating to? Whether in the United States or abroad?
If you look at, I know for a fact that many of the very wealthy people have moved out of our country. There's been stories about a mass movement of people of the elite making sure they're getting out of the bigger areas, going to the islands, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, wherever it is, away from the mass of the people. And but for us as average citizens, if the Gulf oil spill, just think if there's a hurricane, and they said it's going to be the most many hurricanes this summer into the fall. Now, if that pushes all that oil and that dispersant onto the land, and after the hurricane goes away and all that dispersant and oil is left upon your house think of how flammable that would be. It would basically be you would lose your city, and then how far would those chemicals go north? If you look at normal wind patterns and weather